Hello. Welcome to Brit Be Living featuring Dilla. Thank you for joining us today.
Really honored to be here, Brit. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. All right, so you're known by Dilla in these streets, and you're known by Sherman to some. I don't know, maybe your wife or your family. But as of late, you're known as this hobby historian turned TikTok viral sensation, and now you're this like major expert on Chicago history. But how'd you get your start?
So it's two kind of answers for that one. The first one would be like how I became a historian, which is primarily my father, who's a Chicago policeman for over 30 years. He had a police brain. And so when you think like a cop, you view the city in kind of like quadrants. And for example, if I wanted to use this car, say I wanted to go to the rink, which is like 7th Street. He would be like, okay, how you gonna get there? Oh, okay, I'm gonna take
Tell me your route.
And I'm gonna turn left on 87. You're not wrong. No, you're not green keys. You'll know where the hell you're going. And it'd be over with that fast. I quickly learned, like, oh no, I'll be traveling east down 87th Street. The rink is on the northeast corner of 87th Street, right? But then it went a little further than that, right? I started learning like odd number streets are always on the south side of the block or on the east side of the block, right? So if your address is 8127, your house is going to be on the east side of the street.
Let me write that down. I've never heard that before.
Right, so just living with him and his brain working like that, that's kind of how I learned the city from the ground up.
Okay.
And then how I got started on the internet is that I have a very cute 8-year-old, 9-year-old daughter who was really into TikTok when we first started, like doing those dances. She thought we were going to be the next kind of father-daughter dance sensation. And because...
She had dreams.
For sure, right? And dreams are great, but she got her realistic ones.
Fair enough.
And maybe she could carry the dancing part. I couldn't. But I knew people would find interest in like a cute little girl telling Chicago history stories, like explaining the grid like I just did, right? She didn't think anybody would pay attention to it. She thought that was the dumbest idea ever. And so to prove her wrong, I did it, and here we are.
Well, listen. Thankfully that she didn't see the vision for you, but you saw it for yourself. So here we are. So, no, that is very cool. So yeah, I mean, obviously you've been really interested in history and you've been showcasing a lot of that around Chicago. But why do you feel like history matters so much?
I think history matters because it permeates everything we do in everyday life. I don't think we pay attention to it, right? Even take like what's probably the most infamous neighborhood in Chicago, right? It's O Block. It's called O Block because they're paying homage to history. A guy by the name of O passed away, and so in honor of him, right? That's a small version of them honoring history every day. But even on a larger scale, right? Like before you buy a house, you see what's the historic value of houses on that block. Before you take a new job, if you're smart, you'll ask, hey, what happened to the person who had my position before, right? What do you historically pay, right? What were the raises? So all those things in history, I just think if you pay more attention to the history, you'll be better informed on how to move today.
No, that is true. And I don't think people think that history is happening every day. Like, we are living history, and that matters. So, no, very cool. All right. Well, I mean, you're a very approachable historian. I don't think any of the historians I knew growing up, seemed as easy to talk to, such as yourself. But I mean, tell us a little bit about yourself. More, I mean, obviously you grew up here in Chicago, South Sider, but I know I'm a suburban kid by birth. And so we don't care as much about where you went to high school, but I know here in the city, y'all rep that heavily. So who you repping,
Calumet High School.
Okay, let them know, let the people know, okay.
If you listen to Kanye West's album, he say down the street with his homie K-Rock, down the street from Calumet, School for the Stones.
Okay.
Name K-Rock, right, so I went to that school.
Okay.
Was kicked out of that school though, ended up going to alternative high school.
Okay.
Olive Harvey Middle College, graduated from there. Eastern Illinois University. In between all that, though, I always been in Auburn Gresham, South Side, one address or another. Public schools, like I said, grammar schools. I think the other thing that kind of molded me right is the jobs that I had. I tried to be a drug dealer at an early age. I was quite terrible at it.
Well, some things you should fail at. You never know.
All my friends was attempting it, so I was quite terrible at it. But I always wanted to like be fly like them. Okay. So I always like the dude who just would have two jobs, you know what I'm saying? And fortunately for me, like those jobs exposed me to the city in a way other people wouldn't. Like my homies never left the hood, but I was a lifeguard. So you get sent to whatever pool they need lifeguards at. You know, I would have never been on the north side. I would have never been at Eckerd Park. I would have never been at Fullerton Beach. You know,
got to really see the city.
Got to really see the city. And that was just, you know, and got paid to do it, right? So
can't have that hustle.
Yeah, for sure, right? But I grew up, like I was saying, a great upbringing. Of course, you got to navigate city politics, street politics. If you're here, you live in the city, you outside, you're going to have to deal with that. So I survived that, thankfully. But like I said, I also was afforded the opportunity to explore and take the train and do certain stuff. So I had a real fly Chicago upbringing.
Love that. Well, no, I mean, your part about, again, like, having that experience of trying to sell drugs and, you know, experiencing growing up, you know, in the hood with your friends, and everyone takes different paths. And I think that's something that people highlight a lot about Chicago, the less than savory parts. But you're, you know, highlighting a lot of great things. But Chicago's a great city, but how do you think we can possibly be a little greater?
One, I think by like paying attention to what historically has worked in Chicago. When we had like summer job programs and in larger numbers that made the city greater, our crime rates were lower. When we had extracurriculars, right? During World War II, CBS High School, which is on 87th Street, was used in the war industry. Like the students was building like bombs and munitions and all kind of stuff. It was open 24 hours a day. If you was unemployed, you could walk in there and then train you up and help you get a union job. And that was in high school, right? If you look at the economics of the time too, we was doing great. So stuff like that, right? Like there are needs that are happening that we could be training our students to do. So that way when they come out, they already prepared. You know, if that's coding. But again, like paying attention to what historically has worked for us is always a very good blueprint. And then another thing we gotta like stop doing is like waiting on a Band-Aid, right? Especially like as it relates to crime, we want the first person elected to fix it now. And those problems took 50 years to become what they are. It's gonna take at least 10 to fix them. But you gotta like be consistent. So I think those things are what's needed to make us even better than we already are.
Sure. Oh, that's real. Okay, well to that point. So how we can possibly make Chicago greater? But like, what are your hopes for this city?
I'm hoping that all sides of the city realize that rising tide raises all ships. You know what I mean? It's like people in Rogers Park getting ready to start caring about crime, so Rogers Park start getting a lot of crime.
But we're all in this together, so.
Right, and so I think those are the things, you know, you got to care when the kid get killed in Roseland, whether you live in Roseland or not. But before he gets to a point to where he's playing in the streets, like we got to invest early. You know what I'm saying? I think everybody in the city should have like a mentor, a mentee. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that would do leaps and bounds, make us better.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Like seeing where you can possibly go, even if you don't do that same exact path matters. Like I'm where I am today based on not just my family and the people, but the people I saw, women that were like, oh, that's a career woman, I could do that. And so mentors and, you know, people actually seeing that definitely matters. So especially for the kids. You're raising, I know we talked a little bit, you have several children, 7, I believe. You've mentioned the daughter that got you started in this path exactly. You hoping any of them will follow in your footsteps?
I think my 14-year-old might. He want to play basketball, but every 14-year-old boy wants to be in the NBA. But if he happens to not be the next LeBron James, he has a real good memory.
Okay.
He's always, I don't know if he's using it to get cash shops out of me, but he always like regurgitating Chicago facts around me.
That's smart. Okay.
Yeah, so, right? Listen. I ain't mad at this hustle.
Intuitive kid you have there.
I don't know if like follow me as a historian, but what I do appreciate is that they see me working hard and see me pursuing what I would consider a dream, and I don't think any of them are gonna settle for anything less, right? Like my 9-year-old is probably never gonna work a day job. She wanna be a dancer, she wanna be an actor. She gonna be one of the people that like wait tables and drive Ubers while she auditioning for stuff because she ain't finna.
The gig economy has kept us going.
You know what I'm saying?
So we respect that too.
But that's gonna be her until she get her big role, just so she can quit when she get her big role and ain't gotta deal with nobody. So
I see great things in her future because clearly she stubborn and got you in the way. So that's good. Okay. All right. So again, you've been telling us about all these interesting things about Chicago, how anything cool has come from Chicago. I love that. That's one of my favorite things to see on your TikTok and your Instagram. Like everything cool about this country. I mean, like we came from Chicago in some way or form. So I love that. But I don't think I've seen, and I've been really interested to know, like, what's your favorite Chicago history fact?
That's such a loaded one.
You can give me your top two if you have those.
Man, one, I think that it was Black Chicagoans that helped introduce jazz to the French. They didn't have slavery in France, right? And during World War I, especially, wasn't a lot of Black people, you know, if any, over there. But because the armed services were segregated, that's where they sent African Americans to fight during World War I. And most of those people were most of the Black brothers was from Chicago and Harlem, but more from Chicago or enlisted through the Chicago regiments.
Got it.
And because at that time, Chicago was home of jazz, you know, you're going away to war, you pack your stuff right, you pack some records, you pack things that you like. And the French had never heard that music before, but it was Black World War I soldiers from Chicago that introduced jazz to the French.
Okay, look at us showing the world a little great music. I want to hear it. So, okay. All right. Well, I know you have a lot of cool things in the pipeline here. So, what can we expect to see from you coming up soon? Dilla on the screen near you, or what?
Well, so with WCIU Channel 26, we did a 30-minute Black History special, Black History Verified. That's going to come out on February 6th, I think. It's going to air every Friday during Black History Month. I'm co-hosting the Great Chicago Quiz Show with Jeffrey Bear on our PBS station. That's going to come out in April. I got like 6 episodes of that. And then right now I'm writing a pilot. Fingers crossed that hopefully the same production company that's producing Chicago Party On, Chris Witowski and Richie, their production company, approved the treatment that I wrote for a show that I can't name quite yet, but hopefully you'll see it on the streaming platform very, very soon.
Okay, so fun things are coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that because, you know, people need to know more about Chicago. But, okay, one last question. What's the number one thing people should know about Dilla?
Man, that's a pretty good question. None of this is for me, right? I think it's easy to be like, oh man, bro at the Bulls game, or bro with the Bears, or bro hanging with Chance. And I think that's happening because people recognize I just want to tell our story. You know what I mean? Like if I'm at an event, it's legitimately so in 2050, I could tell you about the event as our historian. You know what I'm saying? Like the first person narrative and storytelling matters. And we've been missing that in a lot of spaces too. Black people have been doing a ton of cool stuff now, right? Even today that isn't being recorded, isn't being disseminated. And I feel very passionate about recording them and disseminating our facts. So again, nothing that I'm doing is for me. It's just for the city.
Love that. Okay. Well, this is good. Well, Dilla, I am so glad I got to talk with you today. I have definitely been following your story since you first popped up on one of my feeds, probably TikTok. And so I just love to see people doing such great work. But again, this has been a great conversation. And thank you for joining us on Brit Living.
Thank you for having me, bringing you dope. I appreciate you.
Thank you.